All right, so you ready there, Brian? You got everything up? So, welcome, folks, to the February 2016 New Mexico Drought Monitoring Work Group. And this is Dave Dubois in Las Cruces. And let's go around the call and introduce yourself and see who's on the line.
Raymond of AWR Reclamation.
Susan Rich, State Forestry.
Rick Young, Army Corps.
Les Owen, New Mexico Department of Ag.
Dave Hefner, National Weather Service, El Paso.
Brian Geyer, National Weather Service, Albuquerque.
Ken Richard, the Office of State Engineer.
Molly Magnuson, the Office of the State Engineer.
Chris White with NASA Sport and National Weather Service.
Okay, anybody else?
Susan Bryan with the Associated Press.
All right. I think that's...
Dave, Jeff Phillips here from Los Ranchos, and there may be two others dialing in from another location. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right.
There are two others from another location in Los Ranchos.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okie dokie. So we'll go ahead and get started. First thing on the agenda is National Weather Service report. And I think, Brian, you're doing that?
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Dave. So I just wanted to preface our talk here with what's going on currently across the area. We do have winter storm warnings for northeast New Mexico, surrounded by some winter weather advisories. And then off to the south in the El Paso area, we do have red flag warnings and some wind advisories posted. And we've had some really warm weather, and it's been really dry the past several weeks. That's going to come to an end later today, and we'll be looking at significantly colder air moving in with some wind and potential for even some snow showers in the Albuquerque area tomorrow. So definitely a shocking change compared to what we've seen the last several weeks, and this is good because we certainly need it. I'll go ahead and load the Weather Service presentation here. Okay. All right, so I'll just start by saying if it was not for the blizzard event at the end of December and a heavy snow event at the end of January and early February across the northern mountains, we would be in much rougher shape. And unfortunately, this is not really what we were looking at going into this winter, but there still is some hope as we go through the spring. So this first slide here is January 2016 precipitation. The statewide average was just over a half an inch, which was almost a tenth of an inch below normal. Most of that precipitation was weighted by some heavier snows, like I said, across the northern mountains. The majority of the state here in this lower right image saw well below normal precipitation, and some folks didn't pick up anything in January. As we move on to February, conditions have not gotten any better. In fact, it's been quite a bit worse. Most of eastern New Mexico has not really picked up much. Most of the state is below normal. There was one event that impacted the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. We just had a mesoscale event there where we had anywhere from 15 to 30 inches in that area around Mora and Gascon. And so this has really taken a hit. Our snowpack has taken a huge hit across the state, especially across the south. Here's a look on the left of the February 1st snowpack, and just about every single basin was above normal. And now on the right here, on February 20th, it's looking pretty bad, especially across the south. We went from 157% of normal to 36% of normal in the course of 3 weeks. And the warm temperatures have not helped that. We had record highs at almost every station across eastern New Mexico last Thursday, including a 75 here in Albuquerque, and Roswell was 91 degrees, which blew away the record. Was the first time it ever hit 90 degrees in February in Roswell. So Good thing is the northern mountains are still holding strong with near average, and a couple basins still a little bit above average thanks to that one event we had in February. And what we see over the next couple days will add a couple more inches to that, so that should help some. And the colder temperatures should also help as well. Just to look at Colorado real quick, they're doing good. Everyone pretty much right at normal. The recent warmth has also started melting the snowpack, and that is starting to show up in the river up here at Rio Grande and Budo. The blue line is the average, the long-term average flow at that station. And this may be hard to see, but there's kind of a dark orange line, and that's this year so far. So we're right around 800 CFS. I did look this morning, and that has leveled out a bit. So, but compared to average, this is really bad. This is like late April. So hopefully the colder weather and a little bit more snow can kind of trend this line back, and it should. So definitely starting to see some indications of snow melt. So let's take a quick look at our rankings for January. It was the first, well, January was below normal. Last year was above normal, but most Januaries really have been below normal for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's not really anything new, but we were hoping definitely to be in a different situation than we currently are. Here's a look at the legacy precipitation summary for January here on the left. Most sites across eastern New Mexico in these yellow colors received less than 1/10 of an inch, if not pretty much just trace precipitation. And that stretched across pretty much the I-40 corridor into western New Mexico with very little precipitation for the month of January. However, if you look at the water year on the right, you can see most stations are doing really well still, and this is strongly weighted by what we saw in the October, November, December period. So hopefully, as we get into March, it does look like the pattern will become more active. So these numbers are going to go down for February because it doesn't really look all that active for the next week, except for what we'll see today and tomorrow. The water year, again, doing quite well with 170% of normal. That is down from the previous 3 months, which was at 178% of normal. So 12th wettest currently. The 12-month period, still doing good. We had wet conditions as we ended out last year, so it's keeping the average pretty high. Going back to the 24-month period, we start weighting it down a little bit more, but we're still doing quite good. Statewide average precipitation is over 5 inches above normal. And then back to 36 months, still above normal, just slightly. And then here on the bottom, you can see if we go back 4 and 5 years, that's when we start dragging in those exceptionally dry periods that we saw back in 2011, 2012. The NASA Sport deep soil moisture, the 1 month change. I wanted to show this today to highlight how much drier it is across most of our area compared to a month ago, especially this northeast part of New Mexico and southeast Colorado. These change values are near 20% for the column, so that's fairly significant. The northern mountains, this is a reflection of the snow melt, snow and snow cover across that area. And you can see out in the Texas, they've had this, I'm not even sure I'd qualify it as a flash drought anymore. It's been going on for a little while, but significantly drier across Texas and then this area of southwest New Mexico. If we take a look at just the first 10 centimeters of the soil, you can see the first thing that stands out is all this area which is snow covered across the north. But if we were to look back a couple months ago at some of these values, you'd see a lot more green. There's a large area of near zero across the Rio Grande Valley and then across a good chunk of the northeast. This area in the southeast we've been noticing has pretty much remained unchanged with these graphics for quite some time. And there was like 8 to 20 inches of snow out in that area in the end of December and early January. We had drifts that were 5 to 8 feet. So we're going to be looking into this and seeing why we didn't see really any reflection of any snow melt across that area in that top 10 centimeters. So that's something we'll talk to the sport folks about. But in general, it's just drier across the board for most areas. Here's a regional drought status. The focus remains across California. And I think by this time, folks across Southern California were thinking they'd be dealing with mudslides and flooding, and it's been dry. So we're looking at maybe a wetter spring, hopefully, as we get into the next 3 months. But as far as New Mexico goes, we're still just got this abnormally dry area across the west and then southwest Chavez County. I do suspect that we'll be looking at some change, maybe the addition of at least some D0 across a few areas. And we'll talk about that more later. Going back to the 3-month period, we had some D1 across portions of west central New Mexico. That has since disappeared. And let's take a look at the extended outlooks. Talk a little bit about the ENSO. The images on the left, specifically the one on the bottom left, is the sea surface temperature anomaly. That's traditional of what you would see in an El Nino scenario. But if you notice, over the last few weeks, that area of warm water that's off the west coast of South America has shifted westward. It's cooled. So we're starting to see more of the focus across the Central Pacific. The anomalies on the lower right, they're still really strong. This is greater than 2 on average across the equator. So still looking at a very strong El Nino across the area, but it is beginning to show signs of fading along the west coast of South America, as we would have expected by now. Looking at the regions, here on the lower left, these are the various regions that we calculate the indices and the anomalies for across the Pacific. And pretty much everything is starting to tail off. You can see on the far right, we're trending cooler overall in the majority of the regions. The forecaster and model consensus, we've been showing these charts for quite some time with the columns near 100% for several months now, and we're going to start seeing that tail off as we go through the spring period, especially in the summer, and then we start seeing the neutral conditions being favored through the summer. And then note, these dark blue starting to rise too as we go into the late summer and early fall period. There has been some discussion of this El Nino being replaced by a La Nina. The model consensus from CBC continuing to support El Nino and this gradual decline as we go through the summer and into the early fall. And even this pink line here showing that we'll go below 0 as we head out into the late summer and the fall. So they're indicating that this development of a possible La Nina as we go through the fall and into the winter months. So the outlooks, here's where we have hope. As we go into March, we're still looking at this area to be favored for above normal precipitation across most of New Mexico, especially the Northeast. And this system that we're looking at for today and tomorrow, that's pretty much where it's focusing across that northeastern part of the state. Temperature, pretty much equal chances for March, although when I was looking at February, I think I saw +6 departure at Clayton. So way above normal statewide for February. And going into the spring period, this is really the heart of where we would expect to see above normal precipitation. And CBC is calling for the potential there across all of New Mexico. So 50% probabilities of above normal precipitation. This is really good. So we'll see if we can squeeze that out. The pattern is starting to look a little better as we go into the extended model. So below normal, above normal precipitation, below normal temperatures for a good portion of New Mexico. And then if we take a peek for the April-June period, still favoring above normal across the majority of New Mexico and even the southern and central Rockies. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. And that's all I have, Dave, now.
All right. Questions for Brian? All right. It's a quiet bunch today. All right, well, thanks, Brian. All right, so if there's no questions, let's move on to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation Reservoir Report. And I think Raymond Abeta is on the line.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Sound good.
Okay. I'll start on the Rio Grande Basin. Potoro, 13,101, which is pretty low. Heron, 70,202. Novato, 34,887. Coach Abiquiu is 132,225. Coach T, 47,065. Allison Butte, 387,245. And Caballo, 30,383. Over on the Pecos, Santa Rosa is 96,706. Sumner, 45,900. Brantley, 32,355. And Avalon, 44,58. So on the Rio Grande Basin, we were hearing already there was some concern that the snow-tail numbers are starting to come down already, and it looks like we are out of Article 7, and once the water does start to come up on the north, we can start to store for Prior Paramount first, and then emergency drought act for the district. We'll just have to see how that works. Quite a few of us getting nervous seeing that snowpack already coming down and the temperatures warming up. So hopefully this will play out nice and give us some more snow and kind of refurbish some things as far as snowpack. And on the Pecos, CID had a pretty much full system, so they were evacuating water out of Brantley and a little bit out of Sumner also. They stopped that since last week. They pretty much going to see what the snowpack will do and then see if they'll get rid of any more or just try to go into it as they are. And unfortunately, it's kind of hard to tell right now. These warm temperatures threw everyone for kind of a loop. But otherwise, we're doing well. The river is nice and full. It's wet, continuous, and so we're doing well that way. FSID planning on starting up on irrigation March 1st. The CID will probably pretty much do the same thing below Brantley. And same with the district, on the Rio Grande MRGCD. We'll start up the canals March 1st here in a week or so. So we'll start another irrigation season, and we'll just see how this all plays out and what it gives us. That's pretty much what I have unless anyone has questions. No?
No
Okay,
questions.
well, thank you.
All right, thanks, Raymond.
Welcome.
All right. So let's move on to the next item on the agenda, and I think I saw Chris Romero on the go-to. Are you on, Chris?
Yeah, I'm here. I apologize. I was in another teleconference that ran a few minutes over.
Yeah, no problem.
When you were talking about snowpack is when I jumped in. So if there were any questions for me prior to that, I wasn't on. So
no problem.
You've pretty much summed up a lot of what I was going to say. As far as the snowpack goes, I mean, everybody knows it's 10 to 20 degrees above normal for majority of the state. I just ran some quick numbers last Friday, and on average, we're losing about 1 inch every 2 days or so as far as snowpack goes. More in some places, to the south, but we're kind of approaching an average winter at this point, like pretty much the numbers that we had last year. We started off really good. Even in November, there was a good storm, and then in December, and then the last good push we had was the end of January, rolling into the February, and then it's been pretty dry. But I'm still positive. That's what I tell the media about the indicators for El Nino, and you kind of touched on it earlier, you showed that the runoff had started a little bit, but I think that's going to decrease because those temperatures are supposed to drop, and the precip is supposed to come back. And in the higher elevations, we're retaining a majority of our snowpack. We've lost 10 to 15 inches in some places, but not all of it. So I'm positive that winter's not over yet. Outside of that, do you have any questions or?
Well, Chris, I want to comment that,
Sure.
It does look like when looking at the extended models, there's another cold system that kind of comes across. It's fairly dry,
Sure.
like Friday, Saturday, which is good, keep the snowpack. And then there's another one, it looks like early next week, that may actually deliver some more snowfall to the northern mountains. So we're kind of starting to see that the pattern is getting a little more active. So I think what you're saying there is definitely starting to show up.
Yeah, and I'm heading out tomorrow to do survey work, and it's expected to snow a little bit up in Taos area tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be anything real significant, but like you just said, we're moving back into that pattern, and I don't think winter's over yet. Absolutely. That's pretty much all I've got, unless if there's any questions. No? Yeah. Everybody was quiet in the last meeting I was at, too.
Guess not. I guess. All right. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll have, the next Basin Outlook report will come out next week sometime, so we'll have a good picture of how we look for March.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been tracking the southern stations, and they've been looking very, very pitiful. If I could choose a right word.
It started off, in Sierra Blanca. They were doing really good down there, and then it's even warmer down there than it is up in the northern mountains, and yeah, it's melting pretty quick. So unless it starts to cool off, they're going to lose a lot of their snowpack. But I remain optimistic about El Nino and the rest of the winter.
I hope so. Yeah, the Signal Peak looks like the worst one. Look, that one was down to like 5%.
Yeah, down in the southwest corner.
Southwest, yeah.
Yeah. And the Zuni, too, out to the west, they had a pretty rough time last winter. And, I was measuring bare ground towards the end of the snow season, and their snowpack's starting to slowly melt off, too. I think they're back around like 15 inches or so. And with temperatures like they are, in a week, that would all be gone.
Yeah.
And they could use the water.
What I was calling you about.
But one thing that is interesting to note is that, even with the snow melt, at least up in the northern mountains, like at the Powderhorn and Santa Fe, our snow water equivalent hasn't decreased a whole lot. So, the snow is melting, but the snow water equivalent is pretty close to what it was, a week and a half ago. So that's good.
Yeah, I guess maybe the lower elevation snow, but not as much as the higher, maybe.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart, and the 2nd of January, February. We started off, I think 2.9 was the last big storm that came through.
Well, that sounds good. If you have any questions on those,
we started off around 15.1 on the snow water equivalent, and we're still at 15.1. It went up to 15.3 at the middle of the month, and then it's only dropped 0.2% over the past 2 weeks.
Right.
Even though we've lost, we went from 59 inches at Taos Powderhorn down to 47 right now. So you lost, is that 11 inches of snow?
no, I would.
And 0.2% snow water equivalent. So that's the good news of it.
That's great. And it looks like we share, at least on the southern, we share the agony with Arizona as well. I think if you go across the border in the southeast, the Mogollon, that's pretty bad. I don't know if you.
Yeah, they're pretty dry too. They were on the last teleconference I was at. It was with all my snow survey partners, and they're kind of bummed out about El Nino right now. But you know that we pretty much share that same weather system, and they're pretty dry too. They're starting to experience runoff in some locations as well.
Cool, man. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, any last questions for Chris?
Oh,
Alrighty. Well, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
I think we'll go on to the next item on the agenda. USGS. I didn't know. Are you on, Anne Marie? Doesn't sound like it. And Brian? Did you get anything from Anne Marie?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, I'll give her a call or send her an email, see if she can get the relatively unregulated stream report out. Include that in on the monthly website. So with Brian has got the Office of State Engineer report up on the go-to, and so will it be Ken or Molly?
I'll be doing it, Ken. So, I think it's just click it. Just go ahead and click it. Here, I'll give you that. Okay. Yeah. So our data comes from Friday. We prepared this presentation on Friday, and as you guys know, we present the current conditions as of Friday, the previous month, last year totals for the same time period, and the average. For Navajo, for the most part, it's a very small amount, larger than last month and above last year and above the average. And that's pretty much the trend, at least for from what we're seeing this month and last month, it's pretty much the same. Ute, exactly the same on Friday as it was last month, and above last year and above the average. Santa Rosa, same thing, same as last month, above last year and above the average. Sumner, same as last month, pretty much the same as last year and above the average. Brantley, slightly smaller than last month, quite a bit smaller than last year, or lower than last year, and above the average. Aaron, same as last month for the most part, slightly above last year and way below the average. Elvado, pretty much the same as last month, a decent amount more than last year, but way below the average. Abiquiu, same level for the most part as last month, same level as last year, and slightly below the average. Ellis and Butte showed the biggest difference between this month and last month. It's above last year, and as we all know, way below the average. And Caballo, pretty much the same as last month, a little bit lower than last year, and quite a bit below the average. That's just a table showing what I just went through, and our normal page. So, that's it.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Any questions? Nope. Doesn't sound like there's questions. Alrighty. Next on the agenda, NMDA. I think Les Owen is on the call.
Yes, Dave, and I don't have a report. I guess concerns this time of year. Of course, as the red flag warnings come up, and we had some areas certainly grew a lot of grass last year, so there's a lot of fine fields out there. So concern about fire danger is certainly on everybody's mind, and as the winds come and dry things out, so we're just hoping the winds are nice to us and the moisture keeps coming. But I don't have a report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them, though.
So last, do you have a sense of how you said there's quite a bit of grass fuel loading out there in the rangelands? Is that right? So do you have any, how far widespread? Because in one of the questions I like to focus in is over on the southeast side of the state, going in outside of all the way through the foothills of Sacramento's. Do you have any, some information on that? Some talking from folks.
I haven't been down to the southeast part of the state in quite some time. Trying to think back to last year, and it seemed like, there's going to be some spots in anywhere you go that just didn't get the rain last year, didn't grow much grass. But as a whole, the state did pretty well. So they should have some standing forage down there. But no, I haven't heard any. I haven't heard anything great, but also haven't heard anything bad. So
okay. And that was when you consider the prime time for some of the grass precip. Is that all throughout the whole monsoon, or is that sort of a later
monsoon
season?
Mainly? There are cool season grasses in pretty much everywhere in New Mexico. Some, of course, more in the higher elevations, but the lion's share of the forage is warm season grass species. So it's the summer months. The monsoon moisture is what grows the pounds and puts most of the standing vegetation out there.
Okay, so areas where we had all that September, October, plus the monsoon really is doing well.
Sure,
and that's pretty much most of the state, other than a few little spots.
You bet. There are some of those spots that they did something wrong and they didn't get it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if there was any other times, like you said, with the cool season that were particularly sensitive to November, December, or even then throughout the winter.
Particularly up in the higher elevations where there is a pretty large component of cool season grass species, if there's the soil moisture that they carry over from the winter and whatnot, about this time of year, those cool season grasses are probably starting to kick up and start growing. So that soil moisture is extremely important to get that component of the grass up. Those cool season species are a lot more important up there.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. It's kind of a reminder to see how, in terms of the timescales for drought, and because we haven't seen a lot of, or actually hardly any precip on that in some of those areas just south of the Sacramento's, and we're just trying to get a sense of. I think Brian had mentioned a little bit. We may expand some of D0, and I'd like to get some concrete, numbers or some kind of impacts, other than just say that there was not a lot of precip and haven't really seen much this year. Actually, since the fall, late fall.
Kind of down west of the Guadalupes, or on the east side, or.
Well, down in Otero, southern Otero through Chavez, that foothills.
Del City, all that stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
Down that. Then it goes a little bit into Hudspeth, toward West Texas. But, yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to see if you had any tidbits of information on rangeland impacts, but trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together here.
Absolutely. I wish I had some more concrete things to offer.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Dave, we did, last week we did a spot for a prescribed burn in Roosevelt County, far southeast, out by Milnesand. And I spoke to the gentleman. He said, he had a lot of fine fuels, and it gobbled up 600 acres just in one. I mean, he burned it all. So, and he had no problem, he said. It just went up. So, I'm thinking it's pretty dry out there already. And that was 600 acres, and then we've had, of course, folks have noticed there's been some media coverage of fires in the Bosque that have been started, and then we had another wildfire down by Velarde. And then if anyone's driven out along I-40 and then out toward Highway 60 towards Fort Sumner and Clovis, there's a bunch of burn scars. I guess somebody was lighting fireworks off along the highway and starting fires, and those burned up pretty good. It got pretty large, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's a sign of how dry it is. Well, that's a good intro to the New Mexico Department of Forestry with Susan. Are you around? You on?
Yes, I am.
Great.
And I have a short report. Actually, I have a call, and I'm expecting an update on the number and acre of fires burned. I can tell you right now that as of last week, it was 171 fires burning 6,330 acres, and that's been up since then. You already reported on those newer fires. We have high fire danger in west central and southwestern New Mexico, as well as in the lower elevations of central and western Arizona. But elevated fire danger is pretty normal for this time of year. We have, let's see, other agencies have had a lot. We've had, working with other agencies, we've had prescribed burns in January and February in a lot of different places in the Jemez, Thompson Ridge, Santa Fe area. BLM had some in the south, Catron County and Carlsbad area. And we have lots of projects actively going on all around the state using federal funds, but a lot of millions of dollars of state funding, watershed restoration dollars, and we're treating thousands of acres on those high priority public lands. I will send you, because that was the beef that just came in. Let me check that. I can send you the updated statistical fire report as soon as I get it from Michaela. Here it is. 174 statistical fires, and statistical means just on state and private lands, non-federal lands. And that was 6,626 acres burned. And if you want it on federal lands, I have to go do some calculations and get back to you on that. So I guess that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Right. Any questions for Susan?
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again, and go ahead and send it to myself and Brian if you get any additional reports, and we can post them up. Alrighty. Next, I haven't heard from Joylyn or Emelita. I don't think they're on. Is that right? With Farm Service Agency? Nope. I hear the silence. All right. So, you want to? I'm just trying to get a sense of what we wanted to send to the drought monitor. I don't know if there's any drought monitor author on the call. I didn't hear any. Well, we can send an email. But I was considering, and then we maybe also want to hear from the Weather Service down in El Paso on, what what reports or anything else in terms of the areas down in that D0 in southwestern Chavez County? My inkling, and I think maybe Brian had talked about it, is that there's some possible expansion of that, and it's a matter of how much and what direction. Do you, Brian? Do you concur with that?
Yeah, I mean, just based on what we've observed here, impacts from the weather, we've even seen some blowing dust. We were looking at the RGB, the satellite RGB product that we get from NASA Sport on that Thursday event.
Yeah.
And we didn't see a whole lot of dust show up in our forecast area, but we did notice there were quite a few small plumes down towards northern Mexico. And I think some of that might have made it up into the El Paso area. And then we had, a decent amount of blowing dust come through the Albuquerque area when the front passed through on Thursday. So near surface soil is certainly supportive of at least some blowing dust with really not a very significant amount of wind. And then, like I said, we've had quite a few fires just crop up here and there, indicating that conditions are pretty dry within the Rio Grande Valley. So my 2 cents would be to expand D0 at least, into the Rio Grande Valley, if not across a good chunk of southwestern New Mexico.
Yeah.
Especially given that they're probably not going to even be in the storm pattern through the next 10 days.
Right.
Yeah, El Paso here. Yeah, we have, with our wind events so far, we've had pretty decent blowing dust episodes with it, so the soils are obviously dry. I know, looking on the percent of normal rainfall, if you go from October through current, we're still probably just above normal, kind of in an area from Deming up to T or C and down to El Paso. But on either side of that, it's been quite a bit below normal, so probably starting to see the first stages of drought again forming.
Yeah.
Yeah, our CPM leader here was saying that he's been out on a couple co-op trips west and south, and all the dirt roads, there's just tons of dust being kicked up behind the vehicles as you're driving through there. So I think that would, at least lend some indication of it being a lot drier now.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of times by this time of year, it's like mud.
Right. Yeah, so maybe...
Hey, this is...
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Chris from NASA Sport. Yeah, this application of the soil moisture data to blowing dust events is relatively new to us, and it's something that came out of the evaluation that we did last summer. Something that folks of us here in the East don't think about those kind of applications until we transfer the data to another part of the country, and then we see this kind of thing come out of it. One thing that we have noticed, and there's some other research to support this, there was a paper that came out in Geophysical Research Letters last year. It really dealt with blowing dust events in Asia. Nevertheless, we think some of that research is transferable to the Southwest, considering some similarity in soil types from what they were looking at. And the gist of the paper, and then we're trying to match that up with some other observations here. And then we may get into a larger kind of a project involving another NOAA entity. But anyway, there seemed to be a significant threshold in the 0 to 10 centimeter volumetric soil moisture, such that when you get below values of about 20% and especially around 16 to 15% or lower, then the probability for blowing dust events increases with, of course, increasing wind speed. And I think you needed generally about 10 knots, and commonly you need about 10 knots and volumetric soil moisture values below. I think really a decent cutoff is about 16%. And I was looking at the values over a lot of the Rio Grande, and a lot of them are actually around 10% or less. But there's a lot of values that are around 15% or less, certainly. And then in a good chunk of eastern New Mexico, especially southeastern. So I would suspect that with any decent wind events out there with those kind of very low soil moisture in the top 0 to 10 centimeter layer, you're probably going to start seeing more of those unless it wettens up soon. That's all I had.
Yeah.
Brian, and if you got anything more to add, or if you notice significant thresholds, during the course of the spring, please feel free to pass those along to us. But there might be a larger project coming soon that we very well may involve you with. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. That's great information for us. Appreciate it.
Okay. Sure.
Well, it looks like one possibility would be to introduce some D0 through maybe Sierra and Socorro along the Rio Grande. I'm just looking at water year at Hillsboro, and they're about 1.4 inches below the normal over in Hillsboro. But this is for the water year, so they haven't had, like many places, they've only had if just a few rain events at all this year, and then pretty low even through October, really. So that may be a possibility, as well as expansion down in the south with the Chavez. So at least maybe have our drought author look into those two areas. That sound reasonable to you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just talking driving down here. It just starts to look dry.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Yeah.
Just driving from Santa Fe?
Dry. I mean, we were driving down here going, I guess that's dust in the air.
Yeah.
It's hazy over Albuquerque.
Okay. All right. I think that would be our recommendation, is to look a little further into that expansion, unfortunately. Any other topics of discussion? Any other things you wanted to bring up before we go to the schedules?
I'm just curious about the winds. The winds seem to be happening like every day now. Is this going to be the start of our spring winds? You guys see any indicators on that?
Well, actually, it really is more recent. In recent days, because we've had so much warmth, we've been able to mix a lot higher. So even if there's not really much wind aloft, we've at least been able to mix that down to the surface. So that's why you've been able to notice that there's been an increase in the wind. But I would say, I think the one thing that has really saved us, and Chris kind of hit on this point of the snowpack not really taking too much of a hit in terms of the water equivalent, because we haven't had a lot of wind this year so far. Any of the snowmelt has mostly probably been from sublimation because it's been dry, but because we haven't had the combination of wind with the dry, that's really saved us, with the exception of a couple events here and there. It does look like we'll get some wind today, and we'll get wind tomorrow, but that's like cold advection wind we'll be bringing in our system, so it shouldn't be as significant as what we would see if, say, we had southwest flow over the area. And then going into the rest of the week, we could see some windiness out in the eastern plains a little bit, but we're going to start bringing in the jet stream a little more, so it's going to come with cooler temperatures, so that'll help. As we, push into late March, April, that's when we really would expect to see an increase in wind climatologically for our area. And, even into May, we can get some really honking wind systems across the area, but with the potential for us to see above normal precipitation, even if we do get some wind, hopefully we'll have more rain too. So we're looking for it to not be as much of an impact. On our webpage, the Weather Service page right now for Albuquerque, there is a link on the top to the spring outlook, which one of our forecasters here, Andy Church, has spent a significant amount of time putting together. And if you look through that presentation, there are some slides in there that discuss wind, what the average winds look like in certain years. So, and that factors in El Nino. So there's another good research there to take a look at for as an outlook for the spring.
Okay, thanks.